Sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do is nothing at all. Not the kind of nothing that comes from fear. Not the silence that's born from walking on eggshells or holding back because you're afraid he'll leave. I mean the kind of stillness that comes from a place so deep, so anchored, that it feels like you're rooted into the earth itself. That stillness. The one that carries both softness and power. It's intoxicating. And it's rare. Because most of us have been taught to earn love by doing, by giving, by explaining ourselves, by proving over and over that we're worth staying for. You keep pouring yourself into someone, thinking the more you show your love, the more they'll love you back. And yet, somewhere in the middle of all that effort, you start to disappear. You've felt it, haven't you? That ache in your chest after you've sent the long message, explained every little detail, tried to solve what was never yours to fix, and he just drifts further away. You replay every conversation in your head, searching for the moment you lost him. But maybe it's not that you lost him. Maybe it's that, in all your movement, all your trying, you lost yourself. Here's the thing no one tells you. A man isn't drawn to a woman because she exhausts herself to please him. He's drawn to the one who can meet his eyes without reaching for him. The one who can sit in her own company and not fidget, not grasp, not fill the silence with nervous words. She's not withholding. She's not playing games. She's just the whole. And when she's whole, her stillness isn't empty, it's alive. It's a quiet that says, I am here, and I am enough. That kind of presence can drive a man wild, not because she's trying to get a reaction, but because she's not chasing one. But I know this isn't easy, especially when you've been hurt before, especially when your mind is screaming that if you don't do something, you'll lose him. That panic, that pull to fix, to explain, to grab hold, it's the echo of old wounds. You chase what you didn't get as a child. You try to secure love before it slips away. What I want to share with you today is the secret behind that feminine stillness. Not the performance of it, not the fake calm that hides a storm, but the real thing. The kind that doesn't just make him pay attention, it changes the way you see yourself. If you've ever felt like you were too much or not enough, if you've ever been left wondering why your giving never felt like it was received, stay here with me. I think you might find yourself in what comes next. And if you feel this speaks to you already, take a second, breathe, and if it feels right, subscribe and keep this space close. We're going somewhere together. It starts quietly, almost without you noticing. One day, you realize you've stopped hearing your own voice in your life. Not the voice you use at work, not the one you use with friends, but the one that belongs to you alone. You've drowned it out under layers of explaining, accommodating, making sure everyone else is okay before you even ask yourself what you need. And by the time you sit down and breathe, you feel hollow. This is why the kind of stillness I'm talking about feels impossible at first. Because stillness asks you to stop performing. And when you've lived your life trying to keep love from slipping away, stopping feels like death. Your body tenses, your mind spins, you imagine the worst. He'll get bored, he'll look for someone else, he'll decide you're not worth it. And the truth is, stillness will cost you some people. The ones who only stayed because you were pouring yourself dry won't know what to do when you stop. But here's what's beautiful, the right ones, the ones who can meet you in your wholeness, will feel that stillness like gravity. They'll lean in, drawn to it without even knowing why. It's not about being passive, it's about presence. It's about being so rooted in your own worth that his actions or his silence no longer dictate your value. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That's what feminine stillness really is. Not an act, not a role, but the quiet, steady knowing of who you are. When you have that, you don't have to demand attention or force connection. Your energy does the speaking. And I know, you've probably been told that men like a challenge. But this isn't about being a puzzle to be solved. This is about being a whole landscape, one he can explore endlessly, but never own. When you live in that kind of stillness, every word you speak, every glance you give, carries weight. You're no longer scattered in 100 directions trying to hold everything together. You're here, and that is magnetic. It's not always soft and serene. Sometimes that stillness comes after tears. After walking away from someone you thought you couldn't live without. After choosing not to beg when everything in you wanted to drop to your knees. It's born in the moments you decide, I am not here to prove I'm worthy. I am here because I already am. A man feels that. He feels it when you don't rush to fill the silence. When you don't over-explain. When you smile without needing him to smile back. That stillness creates space, and in that space, he can actually feel the pull toward you. But this is not about controlling him. It's about freeing you. Because stillness is not just a tool for attraction, it's a mirror for your own healing. And the deeper you go into it, the more you'll realize it was never about him at all. There's a moment, and if you've been through enough heartbreak, you'll know it when you finally stop fighting for someone to choose you. At first, it feels like defeat, like you've laid down your weapons because you lost. But then, in the quiet that follows, you hear something you hadn't heard in a long time, your own heartbeat. And you realize, maybe this wasn't defeat at all. Maybe it was the first time you stopped waging war against yourself. Stillness, real stillness, doesn't come from pretending you don't care. It comes from caring without collapsing, from loving without losing your center. And the strange thing, when you can sit in that space where you're open, but you're not bleeding yourself out, men notice. Not just men, people notice. They feel something around you. It's not drama, it's not chaos. It's a kind of peace that's alive, like a deep lake that reflects everything around it, but isn't disturbed by every ripple in the air. When you're rooted like that, you stop chasing answers from him. You stop trying to read his mind. You stop rehearsing conversations in the shower, trying to find the perfect thing to say to make him understand. Instead, you start listening not to him, but to yourself. And that shift is everything. Because here's the truth. Most of the times you've overgiven, it wasn't because the other person asked you to. It was because you were terrified of what would happen if you didn't. Terrified that love would vanish, that he'd find someone better, that the silence between you would mean the end. But in stillness, you learn something radical. Silence doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes silence is the beginning, the space where clarity walks in. He might start to lean toward you differently. Not because you've tricked him or played some game, but because you've stopped leaking your energy all over the place. You've given him the gift of missing you, of feeling the absence of your constant reaching. And here's the wild thing: when you're still, the right man will not mistake it for disinterest. He will recognize it as self-respect. And if he doesn't, you'll let him go without shattering, because your worth isn't tangled up in his recognition. This is the kind of stillness that doesn't just drive a man crazy, it rewrites the way you've been loving. It's a shift from needing to be chosen to choosing yourself first. And once you taste that, you'll never be able to go back. There's a softness to it, but don't confuse it with weakness. Feminine stillness is not about shrinking. It's not about sitting quietly in the corner, waiting for someone to notice you. It's about being fully here, fully awake, and yet refusing to beg for what is already yours by nature. Your dignity, your presence, your right to take up space. Think about the women you've met who didn't have to say much, yet you couldn't take your eyes off them. It wasn't their beauty alone. It was something in the way they carried themselves, the way they seemed to belong to themselves first. They weren't desperate for validation because they already lived in their own approval. That's what drives a man crazy in the best way. Not a performance of aloofness, not playing hard to get, but the truth that you are already whole before he walks into the room. When you're living from that truth, your stillness has a pulse. It's alive with mystery, with depth, with a kind of quiet confidence that makes someone want to lean in closer just to understand you. And here's the part most people miss: it's not about him. This stillness isn't a strategy, it's a homecoming. When you've spent years overextending, over-explaining, over-loving, stepping into stillness feels like walking into your own house after being gone too long. You don't need to redecorate it for someone else's comfort. You just breathe in the air and realize, I belong here. This is why it shifts everything. Because when you stop scrambling for control, you allow life and love to flow toward you in ways you couldn't force if you tried. Some men will be unnerved by this. They'll try to pull you back into the old patterns because that's how they knew you. But the ones who are meant to be in your life, they will meet you here, in this steady, grounded place. And it's in that place that real connection can grow. Not the frantic grasping of two people trying to fix each other's wounds, but the slow, steady weaving of two whole lives choosing to share space. That's when his desire isn't just about wanting your body, it's about wanting your presence. That's when he starts protecting the peace between you, because he knows it's rare. Stillness doesn't mean you never speak up, never fight, never burn. It means you choose your moments. Your yes has weight. Your no has spine. And because you're not constantly spilling yourself out in every direction, when you do open your heart, it's felt deeply. And that is what lingers with him long after the conversation ends, long after the night is over, long after the years have passed. It's strange how, when you start embodying this kind of stillness, the world around you changes. At first, you think it's just in your head, that maybe you're imagining the way people pause a little longer when you speak, or how he listens differently now. But it's real, because your energy has shifted. You're no longer broadcasting insecurity, fear, or the frantic need to be chosen. You're radiating something entirely different, a calm assurance that says, I am not here to convince anyone to stay. And here's the secret. Men can feel the difference instantly. Before, maybe he felt the subtle weight of expectation every time you were together, the unspoken hope that he'd say something to reassure you, the tension that came when his attention wavered for even a moment. That kind of energy, no matter how unintentional, pushes people away. But now there's nothing for him to push against. You're not pulling, you're not chasing, you're simply being. And it's magnetic. This is where his curiosity starts to burn. Why isn't she trying so hard? Why does she seem so at peace without my constant attention? What is she rooted in that makes her so unshakable? He might test it. He might withdraw a little, expecting you to come running like before. But you don't. Not because you're playing games, but because you genuinely have no desire to abandon yourself again. You've found something far more valuable than his approval. You've found your own trust. And here's the paradox. The less you reach for him, the more he wants to reach for you. Not because you've manipulated him, but because the space you've created allows his desire to breathe. He can feel his own longing without it being smothered by your need. But I want you to understand something important. This stillness isn't about keeping a man, it's about keeping you. It's about breaking the cycle where you give until you vanish. It's about knowing that the right man doesn't need to be chased, he needs to be inspired. And nothing inspires like a woman who belongs to herself. When you carry that energy, your presence is enough. Your laugh is enough. Your silence is enough. And because you no longer doubt that, you move differently in the world. You look people in the eyes. You walk into a room without shrinking. You stop explaining your worth, because you've already decided it's not up for debate. And when he sees that, truly sees it, it doesn't just make him want you, it makes him respect you. And that respect is the foundation of every lasting connection worth having. There's something almost ancient about it, this stillness. It feels like tapping into a strength that's been carried by women for generations, passed down quietly in the way they held their heads high, even when life tried to break them. It's not loud, it's not boastful, but it's unshakable. And when a man feels it, it touches something primal in him. Because here's the truth, most men are used to being chased in some form. Even the good ones. They're used to a constant stream of validation, to being pulled back when they drift, to someone filling every gap in the conversation so they never have to face their own silence. But when you stop doing that, when you hold your own center, he has to meet you differently. And that's where the magic happens. Because now, instead of the relationship orbiting around his comfort, it exists in balance. There's space for his pursuit, his curiosity, his investment. And not because you've engineered it, but because you've finally stopped doing his work for him. But this stillness? It's not something you just decide to have one day. It's something you grow into. It's forged in the moments you want to send the long text, but don't. When you want to explain yourself, but choose to breathe instead. When you walk away from the conversation that's going nowhere, not out of anger, but because you respect your own peace too much to keep bleeding into it. It's not easy. Your mind will fight you. Old fears will claw their way up, telling you that you're losing him, that you're being cold, that you're pushing him away. And this is where the deepest part of the work happens, learning to stay grounded in your worth even when the fear is screaming. When you hold still in those moments, you begin to notice something incredible. The panic that used to control you starts to lose its power. The compulsion to fix, to prove, to beg, it softens. And in its place, you feel something steadier, self-trust. That self-trust is what he feels when he's around you. It's in the way you listen without rushing to defend yourself. It's in the way you let him have his space without chasing. It's in the way you smile, not as a performance, but because you're genuinely at ease. And that's the kind of energy that lingers. It's the kind of energy that makes a man realize he can't replace you, not because you're unavailable, but because you're irreplaceable. You can't replicate the presence of someone who is truly at home in themselves. And that, more than anything else, is the quiet force that changes everything. Here's the part no one warns you about once you start living in this kind of stillness. You can't go back to the old way of loving. You can't go back to begging for scraps of attention. You can't go back to explaining yourself over and over, hoping the right words will finally make someone stay. You can't go back to shaping yourself into whatever keeps the peace while you quietly disappear inside. Because now you've tasted what it feels like to be full in your own skin, and anything less will feel like starving. At first, that realization can feel lonely. You might notice there are fewer people in your life. The ones who thrived on your overgiving may slip away. The ones who relied on you to bend, to break, to smooth things over no matter what, they won't know what to do with this new version of you. And that's okay. Their leaving isn't a loss. It's a clearing. Because what comes next is different. The connections that remain and the new ones that arrive will feel lighter. There's no hidden transaction, no constant performing, no unspoken bargain where you give endlessly in exchange for temporary belonging. You'll be able to breathe. And here's where it starts to drive a man crazy in the way he can't quite name, because he knows you're not holding on out of fear. He knows you're not staying because you need him to feel complete. You're there because you choose to be. And that choice, freely given, carries a weight no amount of chasing could ever create. It shifts the dynamic completely. Instead of him being the center you orbit around, you become two centers each with your own gravity. And when your paths align, it's not out of desperation, but out of desire. That's the difference between a love that burns out and a love that deepens over time. Stillness gives you that difference. It's the pause before you answer, the breath you take before reacting, the way you let a moment pass without rushing to fill it, just to avoid discomfort. It's the choice to stand in your truth without needing to justify it to anyone. And when he sees that, when he feels it in the way you move, in the way you look at him without reaching, in the way you let him be without losing yourself, it stays with him. It makes him wonder about you when you're not around. It makes him think about what's under the surface, what else he hasn't discovered yet. That's not manipulation. That's the natural pull of a woman who lives rooted in herself. And once you become that woman, the world starts to meet you differently. You'll notice it first in the small things. The way conversations feel lighter because you're no longer gripping them, trying to steer them towards safety. The way his eyes linger on you a little longer, like he's trying to read something he can't quite name. The way you feel at the end of the day, not drained, not emptied, but steady. That's the thing about stillness. It doesn't just change how others experience you, it changes how you experience yourself. You stop walking into rooms wondering how to be liked. You start walking in asking yourself how it feels to be here. You stop trying to be interesting and start realizing you are interesting just by existing in your truth. For a man, this shift can be disarming. He's no longer in a position of power simply because you're afraid to lose him. He's now standing across from someone who is equal, someone who can see him clearly, but isn't blinded by the need for his approval. That equality is rare, and for the right man, it's irresistible. But here's where it deepens. Stillness teaches you patience. You begin to understand that not every moment needs an answer. Not every silence needs to be broken. Not every question about where you stand needs to be solved right this second. You learn to let things unfold without forcing them into the shape you want. And in that patience, you start to see people more clearly. You see how they act when you're not constantly reassuring them. You see whether they step forward when you give them space, or whether they quietly drift away. And both answers tell you what you need to know without a single confrontation. This is why stillness is power. Not because it controls anyone else, but because it gives you clarity. And with that clarity, You stop clinging to what was never yours to begin with. You stop chasing what doesn't choose you back. And here's the paradox Jung understood so well. When you stop needing something, you create the space for it to arrive naturally. When you no longer demand love to fill the hole inside you, the love that does come has room to breathe. So yes, a man might find this stillness intoxicating. He might feel pulled toward you in ways he can't explain. But the deeper truth? This stillness is not for him. It's for you. It's your shelter, your compass, your anchor in a world that constantly tries to pull you away from yourself. And when you stand in it long enough, you realize you never actually needed to be chosen. There's a freedom in that realization, one that almost feels dangerous at first. Because for so long, the idea of not being chosen felt like the worst possible outcome. It was the thing you worked so hard to avoid, bending yourself into shapes that didn't fit, staying silent when you wanted to speak, laughing when you wanted to cry. You thought love was something you earned by erasing the parts of you that seemed too much. But when you finally see that your value doesn't rise or fall with someone else's decision, it's like the air changes. You breathe differently. You walk differently. You love differently. You no longer love with a grip, you love with open hands. And that's when something fascinating happens with men. Without even trying, you become a kind of mirror for them. Your stillness reflects back the truth of who they are. If they are insecure, it will bring out their fear. If they are whole, it will bring out their depth. They can't hide from themselves in your presence, because you're not distracting them with your own constant movement. Some will run from that. They won't be able to handle a woman who doesn't need to be filled, fixed, or saved. They'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed. But the right man? He'll feel like he's been waiting his whole life to stand in that kind of calm. And he'll realize that the thing driving him crazy isn't just the mystery of you, it's the way he feels when he's around you. Grounded, centered, clear, because stillness is contagious. But here's where you have to be careful. Once you find this place within yourself, it's tempting to guard it so fiercely that you stop letting anyone in. Stillness isn't a wall. It's not shutting down. It's openness without self-abandonment. It's allowing someone close, but not at the cost of losing your own center. And that balance, the ability to be soft without being swallowed, to be open without being emptied, that is what keeps him leaning in. Because he never feels like he fully has you, not in the sense of ownership, but in the sense that you're always more than what he can hold. There's always another layer, another depth, another part of you that belongs only to yourself. That's the secret. Not playing hard to get, not withholding affection, but belonging to yourself so completely that no matter how deeply someone loves you, there's a part of you that remains yours alone. And that is the part that keeps his mind turning long after you've left the room. It's the part of you he can't name, the place he can feel but never fully touch. He'll hold you, love you, laugh with you, share his life with you. But he'll also sense that there's a quiet within you that doesn't depend on him. And that's where his fascination grows. Because it's not indifference, it's presence. You're not looking past him for something better. You're not waiting for him to fill some emptiness inside you. You're simply here, whole, already full. Men aren't often met with that. More often, they're met with either need or defense, someone reaching for them to feel complete, or someone pushing them away to feel safe. But when you're rooted in stillness, you're not swinging between those extremes. You're grounded. And that balance is rare enough to make him take notice, even if he doesn't understand why. It shows in the smallest moments. The way you sit across from him at dinner, not rushing to fill every silence. The way you smile when you see him, not as if he's rescued you, but because you genuinely enjoy his presence. The way you can let him walk away without scrambling after him, trusting that if he's meant to return, he will. And yes, it drives him crazy in the best way. Because he realizes that your love isn't something he can take for granted. It's not something that will stay no matter how he shows up. It's a gift, one you give freely, but only to someone who knows how to hold it. Stillness teaches you that. It teaches you that not everyone gets access to you. That your energy, your time, your body, your heart, they are all precious. And when you treat them that way, others have no choice but to treat them that way too, or lose the privilege. The thing is, this isn't a lesson you can fake. You can't pretend to have this kind of stillness just to get a man to want you. If it's rooted in fear or strategy, it will crack the moment your feelings get involved. True stillness is born from the work you do with yourself, the nights you sit with your own pain instead of trying to distract it away, the mornings you choose peace over chaos, the countless small decisions to protect your own spirit. That's why it's so magnetic. Because it's not a mask you put on, it's who you've become. And when you become that woman, you stop wondering whether he'll stay. You start wondering whether you want him to. And that's the quiet shift that changes everything. Because now, love is no longer a performance. It's not a desperate audition for a role in someone else's life. It's a conscious choice, yours. You're no longer the girl waiting by the phone, analyzing every text, reading between the lines of his silences. You're the woman who knows that your peace is worth more than any half-love that costs you yourself. He'll feel that difference in the way you look at him. Not a pleading look that says, "Please choose me," but a steady gaze that says, "I already know my value." And that gaze, calm, unshaken, will either make him rise to meet you or back away. Either way, you win. Because stillness isn't about holding on to everyone. It's about keeping the right ones and letting the wrong ones go without bleeding for it. You'll notice something else too. The more you live in this stillness, the more your life outside of love begins to expand. Opportunities come, friendships deepen, creativity wakes up. Because all the energy you used to spend managing someone else's emotions is now free and it's yours again. That's when you understand the real secret Jung was pointing toward. The outer world shifts when the inner one is claimed. Your relationships start reflecting the way you treat yourself. Men who once would have been drawn to your overgiving can't quite find a way in anymore because you're no longer available to be drained. The ones who thrive in mutual respect and depth, they'll feel at home with you instantly. And this is where desire becomes richer. He's not with you because you've wrapped your life around his. He's with you because your life is so full, so alive, that sharing it feels like a privilege. Your stillness tells him without words, "You may walk beside me, but I will always belong to myself." It's not coldness, it's not distance, it's devotion to your own soul first. And when a man feels that, he knows he's not just with a partner, he's with a force. The truth is, stillness will draw some people closer and it will push others away. Both are gifts. The ones who lean in are the ones who are ready for what you truly are. And the ones who leave, they're simply making room for the love that will meet you in your entirety. And when you realize that, you'll stop fearing the silence. You'll start trusting it. Because sometimes, the silence is where the real connection begins. Silence has a way of revealing what noise tries to hide. When you're still, you start to notice what's real, not what you wish was real, not what you're trying to convince yourself is real, but what's actually there. You hear the truth in the way someone speaks to you. You feel it in the pauses between their words. You see it in their actions when no one's watching. And the beauty of stillness is that you no longer rush to explain those truths away. You don't twist yourself into knots trying to make someone's inconsistency look like effort. You don't shrink your needs to fit the shape of what's being offered. You simply see it, and you decide if it belongs in your life. For a man, this can be electrifying and terrifying, because he knows you're not easy to fool. You're not hungry enough to take crumbs and call it a feast. If he wants to be close to you, he has to bring his full self. That's the quiet challenge your stillness gives him. Show up, or step aside. The ones who are ready for that will feel alive in your presence. They'll feel the way your calm sharpens their own awareness. They'll match your patience with patience of their own. And the connection you build will be slower, deeper, more grounded than the kind that burns hot and dies fast. The others, the ones who need chaos to feel alive, they'll leave. And let them. Because your life is no longer a place for people who feed on your unrest. You've worked too hard to get here, to sit in your own company without fear, to hear your own thoughts without drowning them in noise. Stillness is more than a way of attracting someone. It's a way of protecting yourself. It's the quiet strength that keeps you from running back to what broke you, from losing yourself in someone else's storm, from mistaking intensity for intimacy. And here's the part I want you to hold on to. The right man won't just be drawn to this stillness, he'll respect it. He'll feel safe in it. He'll see that your calm isn't a trap, it's an invitation. An invitation to slow down, to meet you in the present, to build something steady enough to last. And maybe that's the real secret. Stillness doesn't just drive him crazy because of how it feels. It drives him crazy because it makes him want to meet you there in that rare, quiet place where two whole people can finally just be. And once you've been met there, nothing else feels the same. Because now you've tasted what it's like to be loved without having to fight for it. You've felt what it's like to sit across from someone and know they're not here out of habit, obligation, or convenience. They're here because they choose to be, over and over. Stillness creates that space. It filters out the noise. It leaves only what is true. And that truth becomes the foundation for a connection that isn't shaken by the small storms. A connection where you don't have to perform to keep their attention. Where you can have bad days, quiet days, days where you don't feel like talking, and they'll still lean in. For him, this changes everything. He no longer feels the undercurrent of anxiety that comes from being someone's only source of stability. He doesn't feel responsible for your worth, and because of that, he can actually see you more clearly. You're not a project. You're not a puzzle. You're a partner. And in that clarity, his desire deepens, not the restless, consuming kind of desire that fades as soon as it's satisfied, but the kind that lingers, the kind that grows with time because it's rooted in respect. He'll notice the way you move through the world, the way you say yes without fear and no without guilt, the way you can be quiet without creating distance and close without losing yourself. These things might seem small, but to a man who has lived in relationships built on drama or overgiving, they are everything. But here's the most unexpected part. The stillness that draws him in also keeps you free. You're not bound by the need to hold him. You're not terrified of losing him, because your center isn't in his hands. You can love him fully and let him go if you must, because love and self-respect no longer live on opposite ends of the scale for you. This is why stillness is not weakness, it's power. Quiet power. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard or demand to be felt. The kind that stands on its own and allows love to flow toward it naturally. And if you've ever wondered what makes someone unforgettable, it's this. It's the way you leave them better than you found them, simply by being anchored in yourself. The way you don't just take up space in their life, you create space within them. A space they'll keep coming back to in their mind, even years later. And that's when you realize this was never about driving him crazy. That might be the spark he first feels, the magnetism that pulls him closer. But underneath it all, this has always been about you reclaiming yourself. Because the truth is, before the stillness, you were living in a constant state of reaction, reacting to his moods, his silences, his approval or disapproval. Your worth was tethered to how he saw you. Now, your worth is tethered to something unshakable. You. And that changes how you love. You no longer love with fear in the background, waiting for the moment it might end. You no longer stretch yourself thin just to hold someone's interest. You love with ease, with presence, with choice. Because if it's not mutual, if it's not deep, if it's not honest, you'd rather have your own company than chase what isn't real. And men feel that in ways they can't always explain. Some will step back because they can't match it. Others will step forward because they've never experienced it. But either way, you stay whole. It's in the way you let moments breathe instead of filling them with noise. It's in the way you can walk away without slamming the door, without needing the last word, because you've learned that your peace isn't up for negotiation. It's in the way you carry yourself soft, but never small. The irony is, when you stop trying to be unforgettable, you become unforgettable. Because you're no longer trying to be what anyone wants, you're being who you are. And that kind of authenticity, it stays with people. Maybe he won't even realize why you linger in his mind. He'll think about your voice in the quiet moments, the way you didn't rush to fill the silences, the way your presence made him slow down without even knowing it. And maybe, long after you've gone, he'll remember the way you looked at him not as if he was your world, but as if you already had a world of your own. And maybe that's the final secret behind feminine stillness. It's not a trick. It's not a strategy. It's the truth of a woman who belongs to herself and invites love to meet her there.